Sure, here. You got a name? Yeah. Nothing for half.
Going to order the April 22nd Citizen Police Review Board meeting. Before I call everybody to order, I want to introduce the folks or welcome back Dr. Darby. Dr. Darby sat in the chair here and cracked this thing for many a year. I believe all members except Mr. Williams is here tonight. I think Ms. Shields is online. And so we are good. Okay, so the agenda for tonight is our opening remarks, followed by our case review, our report from our executive director, our case review, and then if anybody would like any announcements, we will make announcements, and then if you want public comment, there's a sign-in sheet there, and then if anybody is online out there in the remote world, you could put it in the chat, and we will address it at that time. And our solicitor is also on, right, Alec?
I don't see him.
Alrighty, I have.
Yeah,
those,
Tris.
Report. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do have to do minutes. So, you should have received your first about a week ago. Did everybody able to get their minutes and review them? All right, do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Make a motion.
There's a motion to my left, second to our right. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? They have passed. Okay, then we now can do executive director.
Thank you, Dr. Dershio. Good evening, members. It's nice to see all of you in person. I haven't been able to do that in a long while, but it really is. It's really nice and appreciate everybody being here tonight. And Dr. Darby, especially delightful to see you. We miss you.
Thank you.
Dr. Darby was a huge, huge part of this board for so many years. Through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Yep. Love to have you back. There are times experience really makes the difference. Right? Right, Doctor? Been through it. Our intake thus far is a total of 79 complaints that have been processed by Ms. Kirchner. Our, we're ahead of ourselves, it's April, right? So we're a bit ahead of ourselves. We'll see how it all plays out for the rest of the year. And nothing that's extraordinarily egregious. I noticed that there was a press release today related to two cases that happened at the end or the beginning of 2024. You will recall there was an incident on the north side where there was a male had an encounter that involved the use of force with city police. And the second involved an encounter between Pittsburgh police and a mother and pretty controversial, pretty high visibility, and the activist community took note, and they've been following it closely, which is why I bring it up tonight, that you have open investigations into both of them. And the status is they continue to be active. We have some subpoenas out on one case. And on the other, we are coming up Friday, where we'll learn more about the fact or have facts established. But I remind everybody that there's always more to the story. And our investigators have been on both of these cases and trying to piece together, you know, what's factual and what's just speculation. So in light of the letter sent out, I think it was Will Anderson sent it the night before last, seeking a report from the city and their OMI investigation related to those two cases because of the 120 days that had elapsed since those cases were opened by the city. And we certainly have nothing to do with them, with their OMI investigation. Because of the interest there, I wanted to report publicly that, yeah, we still have them open, and yes, there are landmarks coming along in both. The police academy today, we did, out of curiosity, determine how many officers may be coming into active duty. And as of right now, we're expecting a class to be graduated somewhere around June 27th. And that will be bringing out 25 recruits to field training, which should be helpful for the on-duty officers. Remember, they're way below what their allocated number is of 800. They have, I think, less than 700 on the job right now. And they're tired. They're working 10-hour days. Their equipment is not being replenished as it should be. And probably most importantly, they do not have a regular chief of police. You'll recall that former Chief Scarrato left. Assistant Chief Ragland was appointed acting chief of police. He left. And now we have acting chief Martin Devine. They need some stability in the organization. Hopefully there will be some movement on that. I can only assume that this has something to do with the political season, but there has been no activities for I'm aware towards the identification and appointment of a regular chief thus far. A couple of incidents that happened nationally that we should be aware of, only because it suggests that police are becoming a little bolder in how they're handling people. In Idaho, I believe it was, there were two incidents. One that ended up with a 17-year-old male who was behind the fence, had a knife, and was shot 9 times and had his leg amputated and ultimately died. The gentleman was with a kid, he's 17 years old. Was identified as autistic. And he supposedly was brandishing a knife. The video is disturbing to see because there's still a fence, there's a barrier between the police officers and this young man. They fired anyway, and he ended up dying. The other has to do with the removal of a protester. And she was tased. I think this also happened in Idaho. Both of these incidents happened in Idaho, and what's going on out there. But anyway, a woman was dragged out of a protest by private security guards, private security personnel. And she has ultimately sued them for $5 million. The sheriff was on a standby, was right there, watched it happen, did nothing to intervene. Boldness, I guess, is what I'm getting at. We need to be attentive to any of those subtle, but they become rather obvious changes in police approach to individuals when they're having encounters that may have, something unique to them. Like, young man, autism, so what? I mean, bide your time here. You have a barrier, you have some time, some issue. The chief of that department came out and said, oh, they have to make these decisions in a split second, blah, blah, blah. And I think that, here, what we've learned from our law enforcement members is that there's always that assessment period. And yes, you do have to do that, but you have to be reasonable in assessing it as well. And it doesn't seem us far away, granted, but still, the use of deadly force in that situation is very questionable, in my opinion. And the second one, with this woman who was dragged out of that protest by private security with the sheriff standing by. Those private security personnel, I think there were 6 of them, they were arrested and they were charged. So there's something positive there in terms of the system responding to it, but terribly, it's just inappropriate kind of action, it seems. And we gotta be mindful of that. If police are gonna start, and I do not see Pittsburgh police doing any of these things or going back to their old ways. I'm
You
not
know,
suggesting that.
You know what, 2 protests so far downtown, a couple in Oakland, they were all uneventful. I'm sure some of you guys were there, right?
Yep.
And they seemed very peaceful and appropriate, and I didn't see any craziness.
The 50-51 protest 2 weeks ago down at the city county building. I was down there to watch, see what was going on. And if you go back a few years when we had other protests, the police were down there early. They were putting barricades out. They were, have a high visibility. I think it was 12:30 it was supposed to start.
Right.
Yeah, I was down there about 12:15. They were nowhere to be found. Oh, maybe this isn't as good as I think it could be. But then at 12:30, or right about then, they did show up to block the streets. There was no aggression, there was no interference. If anything, the only thing I would have a criticism about, it would be their appearance. They were a little bit sloppy, they were a little bit lazy looking. Their dress was not as sharp as you would want to see. You got a little bit of facial hair that they're experimenting with, that kind of thing. But as far as their demeanor and their interaction with the individuals, the people there, the protest to demonstrate, they were great. They were terrific.
I mean, from what I could tell, the people were just walking that large block, and the officers were friendly. I mean, I didn't see anything that was.
There was nothing in contrast to what we see.
I was gonna say that, did they make policy changes, or was it just practice changes in how they were dealing with protests and gatherings? 'Cause
Practice
I
changes.
think to your point about the clothing.
Yeah.
They weren't with all the tactical gear either, right? In the
That's
past, they've come out with the full
correct, yeah.
tactical gear, which changes the
Mood.
tone.
Right.
So I'll take the facial hair over the tactical gear.
Yeah.
Forgive me, but there was no show, there was no display. And where we've been in the past to where we are now, you recall this board has issued a few reports related to protesting and Pittsburgh tactics related to protesting. And, I compliment them. They were great. They really did a great job that day.
And in Oakland, it seemed like it was, it was both the city of Pittsburgh and the University of Pittsburgh CMU folks. And it seemed fine.
It was, and I think the law enforcement locally deserves the credit for that, and I think it's a huge difference in what we've seen in the past, and that's a real positive for them.
And presumably, there's going to be more, so I'm
Mhm.
hoping that people are realizing we can do these things, people come out, say what they need to say within the law, and we don't need to over police that, and, as opposed to, and again, I think I am watching this, another thing internationally, this is happening
That's
increasingly every week, and I am watching how other municipalities manage that as well, but so far,
Everybody, well, there was a couple states like Oklahoma, as you said, but for the most part, DC, anything that I can see, and they are every weekend, almost every day. Like seniors out during the day and just standing along the road, and it doesn't seem like there's any crazy.
No, and it's encouraging. I
Yeah.
think it's heartening compared to what we've seen in the past. Now, Idaho, the reason I brought Idaho up was because those are blatant demonstrations of policing in the past, not what we see now, especially on the East Coast. But for a department that seems to be in somewhat disarray right now, the Pittsburgh Police, they handle these events admirably. And deserve the credit for that.
And as far as the chief is concerned, the issue was, that I guess was at the last meeting, whether they were gonna wait until after the election, put someone in temporarily, or begin a process, but all we know right now is it's just temporary, right?
That's correct.
Have we heard anything about that they're gonna wait until the election or?
I have no idea. I have no idea what they're doing.
It's one question, I know. That's it. Mayor's office or council that decide when they're gonna do like the national searches. You know, national searches, but I'm gonna initiate
The
that.
mayor. The responsibility for this appointment, chief of police, lies solely with the mayor. Who then in turn makes a selection and then submits it to city council for their confirmation. Council has recently, because of the fiasco we experienced with, former Chief Scalado and the refereeing and all the innuendo that went in subsequently to that selection process, that they will be interviewed under oath. So that candidate now will be interviewed by council as usual, except under oath. And that will inform council's decision as to whether to approve the appointment or not.
Isn't there something that we may have a seat on the committee? Is that still the possibility?
Probably not. Because when they went through the national search, which cost us close to $80,000. We brought somebody back, we had 3 finalists. 2 of them had some questions about their reputations and their performance issues.
Right.
And 1 did not. One of the 2 who had a questionable background was selected by a committee that was appointed by the mayor and the mayor's people. They were a combination, I guess, of community people. There were, I think there was a professor there from people that they felt, had good cred. But they were required to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. So this is supposed to be a public process. They did not allow it to be public. They had people making decisions about it, police who don't even live in the city of Pittsburgh. And don't bring any particular expertise to the table to make a personal assessment like that. But nonetheless, that committee, we were not included. This process then, that came for Acting Chief Ragland, that didn't, it was on the cusp of being sent to council for their advice and consent and process. But then he made an allegation that his personal ethics and value system was being challenged. And he chose to leave. So he resigned that position and retired from the Bureau altogether. So now we have Acting Chief Devine. Technically, he does not reside in the city of Pittsburgh. It is a requirement in the city code that the chief live in the city of Pittsburgh. That's a problem, and that problem is a real policy problem that the people should really make a decision about. You'll recall that the home rule charter was amended to require city employees to live in the city. Subsequent to that, the unions took those things to court, that requirement to court, and there was a relaxation of that. Fire, police, etc. But supposedly for the chief of police, they're still supposed to reside in the city. And our acting chief right now does not. Now, that's not his fault, that he's the acting chief.
Right.
But his ability to go forward in that as a regular appointment would be compromised unless that requirement is changed. And because it's a charter provision, I believe, I'm not sure that council can change that themselves. But it would make a difference in terms of the ability of hiring someone. You know, we may have someone very well talented and qualified on the job right now, but they don't live in the city. They can't be chief, they're disqualified. Maybe it's better. I mean, but that was the same rationale they used for recruiting officers. That if they eliminate the residency requirement and it requires only that you live within 25 air miles of the city county building, that we would have a larger draw to bring people in on the job. They also eliminated the education requirement.
Correct.
So we lowered the standards. And we're still having a problem getting people in. But we do have 25 being prepared now to come out in June. But this also affects that level, the chief of police. So unless that's changed, that's going to remain limited. And at this point, it probably makes a lot of sense to go ahead and relax that rule. Maybe the board would like to hold a hearing on that if it becomes germane to this situation that we have now with the pending appointment of Lord and Chief. But we don't know when that's going to be. I think actually that's all I have for you with, I do want to report that. Our solicitor, Wright, and I met with the city solicitor. I think I gave a brief report of that last month because it was that day we met. And we agreed to have further discussion about what it is we're looking for and why we're having difficulty obtaining it. There's a lot of emphasis on body worn camera video because we're not allowed, we're not entitled to seeing body worn camera video. Our counterparts at the Office of Municipal Investigation, they are permitted to see body worn camera. So what they're doing is they have the ability to observe the video, to close their cases based on what they observe. We can't. That limits what evidence they develop, which we are entitled to obtain through an exchange or through a subpoena. Because it doesn't exist now, because they don't need to do the things that they used to have to do, like take officer statements. That's been a problem. But so too, a couple months ago, the city told the Bureau of Police to not give us anything. So there you go for transparency. We have none. So we came back to the original agreement in March of 1999 that itemized what we are entitled to obtain and from whom. So if there are certain things that online would have, they would be the repository for, they would give them to us. If it's the Bureau of Police, they would give us whatever we had in that agreement. All of which is subject to a mutual agreement of confidentiality. We submitted an agreement of confidentiality that the city refused to sign. We started in 2004. They still haven't signed it. The solicitor now is willing to have a look at that, as well as all of the itemized documents and evidence and things of that nature that the city code says we're entitled by right to have, that we're not getting. And so I've been working on that list. I wasn't able to complete it because we came together tonight, but I have the material to send over to her for further review. It's, for the board's sake, it's something that you have had to deal with every time there's a new administration. And the new administration says, well, we don't have to agree to what the previous administration. Even though all of these agreements and the court orders establish your position and your right to certain things. So we're still visiting that issue. The workarounds that we've had in the past, particularly around video, we would be able to have the chief of police identify a designee. We would call, they would observe the video, we would ask questions about it, they would tell our investigator what they observed. We would refer to the police officer, and we could take that and make that part of the investigative material that went into decisions recommending to you. But those don't work now anymore either because they're not helping the same. So I hopefully will be able to give you a more, a better report in May.
They seem to be a little bit more agreeable now. Lip service or?
It's hard to say, Dr. Gershie, I'm sorry, they don't know. They don't know how they're supposed to deal with you. And they're not terribly interested in figuring it out. So you might recall a couple of years ago, we did, when in 2020, when the home charter was amended, it imposed an obligation on you, on the board, and on the city controller. I'm very pleased to recognize right now, Rachel Heisler is here with us tonight, our city controller, who has been a phenomenal truth teller. As she was, before she came in, her predecessor, Michael Lamb, and we did a joint performance review of the Bureau of Police. Big report, a lot of good information in there. And now that Ms. Heisler is there, our controller, we're working on a couple of other ideas, a couple of other, maybe another performance eval or audit And a couple of, practice things, um, some police practice things, recruitment, retention, that sort of thing, that you did a report on back in 2000. So we have the benefit of being able to work with some of the people in the city in a very cordial way, even though we're obligated to. It's a good professional working relationship. I also note that our city controller, Heisler, is an independently elected individual, not part of the administration, the executive branch of city government. So there's a separation there, and we know it. And our colleagues in OMI have also been they realize, they see the same problem, for us, and we have the same goal. So it's not the people getting the job and understanding what people expect of us having a problem. It's, for some reason, other people don't want us to have what we need to do our work. So this administration, this particular city solicitor has been cordial, is interested in learning more. But we've been there before with the same person, and so we're just going through the motions yet again. I can't really judge it to be a pro or a con job. I don't know.
But we're ready to go back
Oh, yeah.
to court if we have to.
Yes, absolutely. We have subpoenas that are outstanding, and we have indicated that we're ready to go in and enforce them, which means we're going to court. And it'd certainly be more desirable to avoid that. But that, I will have a better answer for you, I hope, with May. And the last thing I have to ask you about is the accommodations here seem to be very nice. We haven't been together, since COVID, and we thought perhaps you might want to make this home for May, June, and July's meeting. We can hold on September, because I think that Ms. Shields had some ideas too about over on that in town holding a community meeting. But if the members would be comfortable doing that, we could pursue and just establish this with Will in advance notice that you'll be meeting here for your May, June, and July meetings. You do not meet in August.
I mean, I think it might about others also chime in, but when it's in the city county government, I mean, it's great. We have the AV, we have lots of perks, if you will. Microphones and, and they come in and they feed for us. The video. Video for us. However, parking in town, walking in town, people are still a little hesitant about town. So, Dean, what are we thinking?
So that's your consensus. We can go forward and we'll try to schedule this May, June, July.
And if we can't get it, we'll just go virtually for whatever month that they have an activity.
Okay, and the meetings still are still accessible on Zoom and streamed on YouTube.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Let's get that hybrid.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think we should always keep going, just because people can't get here if it's nighttime, that way.
Members, are there any more questions for me?
Thank you.
Members, board members, do we have any unfinished business? Hearing none? How about any old business? Ready? If anybody has anything to bring up, we can bring it up at this meeting. However, we would not be able to deliberate, we could just introduce. Does anybody have anything to introduce this month? Alrighty. So let's go into our case reviews. I think everybody has their copy. So we have, no public hearing scheduled, for this month. But we do have 3 full investigations. Case number 06325, case number 040-25, and case number 024-25. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to authorize full investigation.
Thank you. Second,
Second motion.
questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Ms. Dixon may be able to answer this. What is the policy with regards to somebody needing to get their vehicles moved after an accident? In the city?
It's. Like, when you can bring that up. So, we did have police policy. There was great concern years ago about private towers being contested. So there was, instructions how to deal with, let the person make the decision that they let a private tower come through. But I'd have to see the policy again. I don't know if it's changed. That's all.
Ms. Shields, can you hear us? And, Mr. Solicitor, can you hear us?
The Ozarks typed they could.
Hmm?
They said that the Ozarks typed that they could see us and hear us.
Oh, cool, thanks. Alrighty, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 5 cases for 30-day extension, case.
That's fine.
Okay, sorry, correction 4. Case number 042-25. Case number 03925. Case number 026-25. And case number 01525. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 1 case that is unfounded, and that's case number 091-24. Do I have a motion?
Make motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 1 that for, it's unsustainable, and that's case number 018-25. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 3 new suspensions. And that's case number 037-5 sorry, it's 037-25 ED. Case number 023-25 ED. And I guess there's 4 of them. Yeah. Case number 010-25 and case number 004-25 ED. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about that. I think in this case, like a separate issue going to come up on the investigation.
Which number, sir?
Sorry, 023-25 ED. I think the initial complaint was regarding specific officer, but there was some other discussion about the hiring practice. And I'm just curious, how do we address that through this case, or does that become a separate case?
It is collateral that we identified and we'll investigate it as part of that case.
Okay.
All right.
And the question, for 03725, is that because it's an open investigation?
You need for more time?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
That is.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And then as you know, we have, a select record for 17 of them that are, continued suspension, things are being. We don't vote on those, but they're for your information. Does anybody have any questions about those?
If a member has any desire to see the something itself.
Ready, so, our next regular meeting will be at 6 o'clock, here. Hopefully, we'll be able, staff will do magic.
Yep, we'll work on it tomorrow.
All right, and then, we will have it by Zoom and in our other public links for 6 p.m. on May 27th. Is there any public comment? We have a sign sheet over there. Okay,
Would you like me to stand?
whatever you feel comfortable with.
Oh, sure.
I know that sun's right in your eyes.
That's
so-
okay. It's my first meeting, but first of all, I'd just like to say good evening to everyone and thank you to the esteemed board members and the Citizen Police Review Board. It's my first time getting to meet you in person. I stand here before you today with gratitude and admiration, and this is for unwavering dedication that you bring to the community in the city of Pittsburgh that I grew up in. Your tireless efforts to ensure accountability and transparency within the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police are not only commendable, but essential in fostering trust and understanding between law enforcement and the citizens you serve. I actually want to extend special thanks to everyone that I've encountered with, aside from the board members here. That would be Michelle, Demisha, investigator Nicole Edwards, and as well the assistant executive director Stephanie Hampton. They have been tremendously accommodating, amazing. There aren't enough words to express the gratitude that I have in the process of that.
You can find them. No. Sorry.
But their leadership and guidance are a beacon in the journey that I'm currently going through. And I'm sure that others before me have gone through. Beyond my personal experience, I have heard nothing but incredible commendations and glowing just referrals and recommendations, not only from private borough law enforcement, law offices, attorneys, whether they be criminal, civil, any municipality. This is how I found this organization through those glowing referrals. And the last thing I'd like to say is to touch on, pardon me if I mispronounce it, but it's Miss Beth, is it Pittenger? Pittenger, okay, now we want to, right? To touch on her 2 points that she made during the meeting that I have to agree with. As she was discussing the chief of police for Ragland and Devine, the education standard definitely stands there. I've spoken to numerous officers, regardless of their hierarchy, regardless of their standing and how many years they've been in service. Most of them don't even know who the chief of police is or was or is going to be. Now, that's not a big disturbing factor, but it goes along with the point that Ms. Beth Pittenger made regarding the education of those officers. And the second point that she made was that the standard has been lowered for the education of these officers. I have come into contact with 2 officers that were recruits. Now, while they are recruits and outperforming their active duties, they're still considered police officers. And their understanding and education is essential for the 3 main points that I wanted to say, and they are only that communication, you can never over communicate between the people inside of your zone and your division. You need the education and training in order to know what communication should be being conducted. And lastly, that brings you to cohesiveness between those departments. And so I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, your name is?
Thank you.
My name's Matthew King.
Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
I didn't pay him, y'all.
Is there anything on the chat?
No, no one's in there. I mean, no one raised their hand.
Well, we also hear that big 5 years, got that they break bread with each other. So, and then for some of the board members that only saw you virtually, all right. So, I believe that's it. Do I have a motion to adjourn at? Yeah. You? Second, all in favor? Aye.